Commander Sarah Chen stood in the center of the Zephyrian tribunal chamber, her wrists bound with energy restraints that hummed with alien technology. The crystalline walls reflected her defiant face as three towering Zephyrian judges loomed. Above her, their 6 arms gesticulating in what she had learned was their expression of righteous anger. "Human," the center judge spoke, his voice like grinding stone. "You have violated the sacred accord of Kepler Station. You dared to touch the holy relic of Zenth without permission." Sarah's jaw clenched. The relic had been a navigation device from an ancient human colony ship, stolen by Zephyrian raiders 3 centuries ago. She had only been trying to retrieve what belonged to her people in the first place. The irony wasn't lost on her that these beings, who claimed to be paragons of justice, were now sitting in judgment over her for reclaiming stolen human property. "I was taking back what was ours," she said, her voice steady despite the plasma burns across her uniform from the capture. "That device contains the star charts to 17 human colonies. Families have been searching for their lost relatives for generations." The judge's 4 eyes narrowed, their bioluminescent patterns shifting to deep red. "Irrelevant. The punishment for desecrating a holy artifact is clear under galactic law. You will lose the hand that committed this crime." Sarah had studied Zephyrian culture extensively during her years as a diplomatic liaison. She knew this moment would come, had prepared for it mentally. What she hadn't prepared for was the cold efficiency with which they carried out the sentence. The energy blade materialized from thin air, humming with the same frequency as her restraints. She felt the heat of it before it even touched her skin. The Zephyrians believed that a clean cauterized amputation was merciful, preventing infection and ensuring the criminal could continue their life as a reminder of their transgression. "Any last words before judgment is carried out?" the judge asked, though his tone suggested this was mere formality. Sarah looked up at the 3 towering figures, then at the crowd of alien spectators who had gathered to witness human justice. Representatives from a dozen species filled the observation galleries, their various forms of communication creating a symphony of clicks, whistles, and electronic pulses. She could see the satisfaction in their postures. Humans were still the newcomers in this galactic community, still proving themselves worthy of respect. "I want you to remember this moment," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustic design. "Remember that you punished a human for trying to reunite families. Remember that you chose ancient superstition over basic compassion." The judge raised the energy blade. "Your species' tendency toward dramatic speeches is noted and disregarded." The blade came down with surgical precision. Sarah bit back the scream that wanted to tear from her throat, refusing to give them the satisfaction of hearing her pain. The smell of burned flesh filled her nostrils as the energy cauterized the wound instantly. Her right hand dropped to the chamber floor with a wet thud that seemed to echo forever. Through the haze of shock and pain, Sarah heard the judge pronounce the completion of her sentence. She was to be released immediately, banned from Zephyrian space for life and marked in the galactic database as a convicted criminal. The irony wasn't lost on her that they were releasing her to carry word of their justice to other humans. As the restraints deactivated and she cradled her ruined arm against her chest, Sarah looked around the chamber one more time. Every alien face showed the same expression of satisfied justice. They believed they had made an example of human arrogance. Medical drones approached to provide basic trauma treatment before her deportation. As they worked, Sarah's mind was already moving beyond the pain, beyond the immediate humiliation. She thought of the 17 colony ships, the thousands of human families still searching for their lost members. She thought of the smug satisfaction on the judge's face as he carried out what he considered merciful justice. Most of all, she thought about the look of approval from the other species' representatives. They had enjoyed watching a human be brought. Lo enjoyed seeing the newest members of the galactic community reminded of their place. The medical drone finished its work, leaving her with a basic prosthetic interface and pain medication that would last for the journey home. As they escorted her to the transport that would take her back to human space, Sarah caught her reflection in the polished metal walls of the corridor. She looked broken, defeated. Her uniform was torn and blood-stained, her face pale from shock and blood loss. The stump of her right wrist was wrapped in sterile biofoam that glowed faintly blue. To anyone watching, She appeared to be exactly what the Zephyrians intended, a humbled human who had learned her place in the galactic order. But Sarah knew something the aliens didn't understand about human nature. They had studied human diplomacy, human trade practices, human social structures. They had not studied human warfare. The transport ship's engines hummed to life as Earth's coordinates were programmed into the navigation system. Through the small viewport, Sarah could see Kepler Station growing smaller, its massive structure housing representatives from 47 different species, all of them now confident that humanity had been properly educated about respecting galactic law. She closed her eyes and began to plan. The Zephyrians had taken her hand, believing that physical punishment would break her spirit and send a message to her species about the consequences of challenging established order. They were about to learn that they had gravely miscalculated what it meant to wound a human. The transport ship's medical bay hummed quietly as Sarah stared at the datapad displaying her complete military service record. 23 years of service, 4 galactic conflicts, decorated veteran of the Centauri Liberation, and former commander of the elite human expeditionary forces. All of it now marked with a single devastating addendum. Convicted criminal under Galactic Law 847B, sentenced to physical mutilation. Dr. Marcus Webb, the transport's medical officer, finished his examination of her amputation site. The Zephyrian medical technique is actually quite sophisticated, he said, trying to maintain clinical objectivity. Clean cut, perfect cauterization, no nerve damage beyond the amputation point. You'll be able to interface with any standard prosthetic within days. Sarah flexed the muscles in her remaining hand, watching the tendons work under her skin. How long until we reach Earth? 72 hours at current speed. I've already transmitted your medical data ahead. The Military Medical Center is preparing a full prosthetic suite for your arrival. Webb paused, his professional demeanor slipping slightly. Sarah, I've read the tribunal transcripts. What you did wasn't criminal. It was heroic. Tell that to the 47 species who watched them cut off my hand and approved. Sarah's voice was flat, emotionless. Tell that to the families who will never find their lost colonies because I failed to retrieve those star charts. The transport's captain, Maria Santos, entered the medical bay carrying 2 cups of coffee and a grim expression. Just received word from Earth Command. The story is already spreading through the galactic news networks. Human criminal justly punished for violating sacred law. They're making you into a cautionary tale about human arrogance. Sarah accepted the coffee with her left hand, the awkward grip reminding her constantly of what she'd lost. What's Earth's official response? Diplomatic protests through proper channels, strongly worded objections to the severity of the punishment, request for reconsideration of the Sacred Accord's application to human artifacts. Santos's expression darkened. In other words, nothing that will actually accomplish anything. They can't risk a full diplomatic incident, Sarah said, understanding the political reality. Humanity still needs the galactic community for trade, technology exchange, territorial agreements. One human sacrifice isn't worth destabilizing those relationships. Dr. Webb began packing his medical supplies. That's a remarkably pragmatic view for someone who just lost a hand defending human interests. Sarah was quiet for a long moment, staring out the small viewport at the stars streaming past. Each point of light represented systems where humans were trying to build new lives, forge new relationships with alien species, prove that they deserved a place at the galactic table. My father was a colony ship captain, she said finally. The UES Magellan launched in 2387. 18,000 colonists headed for the Tau Ceti system. They never arrived. For 40 years, my mother checked every incoming transmission, every deep space probe report, hoping for word about what happened to them. Captain Santos leaned against the bulkhead. I remember that ship. It was one of the early launches before we had reliable quantum communications. 3 years ago, I found references to human technology in a Zephyrian archaeological report from the Tau Ceti system. Energy signatures that matched the Magellan's drive core. Debris fields with human metallurgical signatures. But when I requested access to investigate, they claimed it was a protected religious site. The pieces fell into place for Dr. Webb. The holy relic of Zenth, it wasn't just any navigation device. It was the Magellan's primary navigation computer. I confirmed it during the 3 minutes I had access before their security forces captured me. Sarah's hand tightened around her coffee cup. 18,000 human beings, including my father, dead for 3 centuries while the Zephyrians turned their technology into a religious artifact. The medical bay fell silent, except for the ship's engine harmonics. Captain Santos spoke first. Why didn't you include this information in your defense at the tribunal? Because it wouldn't have mattered. Galactic law doesn't recognize human claims to technology recovered from space disasters. If a species finds it first and declares it sacred, it becomes untouchable. Sarah finished her coffee and set the cup aside. Besides, I had more important things to accomplish during those 3 minutes than gathering evidence for a legal defense. Dr. Webb's eyes widened. What did you do? Sarah smiled for the first time since her capture, and both officers were surprised by how cold the expression was. I downloaded everything. Complete star charts for all 17 missing colony ships, including their final transmission logs. Every piece of data the Zephyrians have been hiding for centuries. She pulled out a small data crystal from her uniform's inner pocket, its surface glowing faintly blue with encrypted human military codes. The Zephyrians were so focused on the symbolic violation of their holy site that they never considered I might have a practical objective. Captain Santos stared at the crystal. That data could reunite thousands of families, locate 17 lost colonies worth of human settlements or wreckage sites. It's invaluable. More than that, Sarah continued, her voice gaining strength. The final transmission logs show that 6 of those colony ships didn't crash or suffer technical failures. They were attacked and captured by Zephyrian raiders, their populations enslaved for mining operations. The implications hit both officers simultaneously. Dr. Webb sat down heavily. There could still be human populations held in captivity, descendants of the original colonists born into slavery, never knowing their true heritage. Sarah's expression hardened further. The Zephyrians have been using human labor for 3 centuries while publicly supporting our entry into the galactic community. Captain Santos was already moving toward the communication console. We need to transmit this to Earth Command immediately. No. Sarah's command voice stopped the captain in her tracks. Not yet. If we transmit this now, it becomes evidence in a diplomatic process that could take decades to resolve. Human lives will remain enslaved while committees debate jurisdiction and proper procedures. Then what do you propose? Sarah stood cradling her injured arm. The pain medication was wearing off, but she welcomed the sharp reminder of what the Zephyrians had cost her. I propose we take a lesson from human history. Sometimes justice doesn't come through proper channels. Sometimes it comes from someone who's lost everything and has nothing left to lose. The transport ship continued its journey toward Earth, carrying its cargo of revolutionary data, and one very angry human who was beginning to formulate a plan that would shake the foundations of galactic civilization. The underground bar on Luna Colony Station existed in the gray zone between legal and illegal, frequented by the kind of people who didn't ask questions about scars, missing limbs, or the haunted look in someone's eyes. Sarah sat in the corner booth, her new prosthetic hand gripping a glass of synthetic whiskey while she waited for her first contact to arrive. 2 weeks had passed since her return to human space. 2 weeks of medical appointments, psychological evaluations, and carefully worded debriefings with military intelligence. Everyone wanted to hear about her experience with alien justice, but no one wanted to discuss what she intended to do about it. The prosthetic was military grade, top of the line with tactile feedback and neural interface capabilities that made it nearly indistinguishable from her original hand. But Sarah could feel the weight difference, the slight delay in response time. It was a constant reminder of Zephyrian justice. Commander Chen. The voice belonged to a man who moved like a predator despite walking with a cane. Colonel James Harrison, former Special Operations, dishonorably discharged after the Proxima incident. His left leg was a prosthetic, his right eye was cybernetic, and his service record was classified at the highest levels. I'm not a commander anymore, Sarah replied, gesturing for him to sit. Just a convicted criminal with an interesting story to tell. Harrison smiled, the expression not reaching his artificial eye. Funny thing about interesting stories. Sometimes they find their way to interesting people. He signaled the bartender for a drink. Word is you've got information about missing colony ships. Sarah studied the man across from her. Harrison's reputation was legendary in certain circles. When official channels failed, when diplomatic solutions weren't sufficient, when problems needed to disappear quietly, Harrison had been the military's unofficial problem solver. Until the Proxima incident changed everything. 18,000 people on the Magellan alone, Sarah said quietly. Families who never knew what happened to their loved ones. Children who grew up without parents. Spouses who waited their whole lives for word that never came. And now you know what happened to them. Harrison's drink arrived. Something clear and potent that he didn't bother to sip. Question is, what are you planning to do with that knowledge? Sarah placed the data crystal on the table between them, its blue glow reflecting off Harrison's cybernetic eye. Official channels will take years, decades, diplomatic procedures, committee hearings, legal challenges to galactic law. Meanwhile, human beings remain enslaved, assuming they're still alive after 3 centuries. The data suggests they are. Generational slavery, breeding programs to maintain worker populations. The Zephyrians have been very careful to maintain their human labor force. Sarah's prosthetic hand clenched involuntarily. They've turned our missing colonists into livestock. Harrison picked up the crystal, examining it in the dim bar lighting. This kind of information could start a war, or end a great injustice. Sarah leaned forward. I need people who understand that sometimes the right thing isn't the legal thing. People who've been abandoned by the system they served. People like me. Harrison pocketed the crystal. What makes you think I'm interested in another impossible mission with no official support? Sarah smiled, and Harrison was reminded why she'd been considered one of the military's most effective commanders. Because you know what it's like to be sacrificed for political convenience. Because you understand that sometimes retired soldiers are the only ones free enough to do what's necessary. Over the next hour, Sarah outlined her plan. It wasn't elegant, it wasn't subtle, and it certainly wasn't legal under galactic law. But it was achievable with the right team and the right resources. Harrison listened without interruption, occasionally nodding or asking clarifying questions. When she finished, he was quiet for several minutes. You're talking about assembling a team of military rejects to conduct unauthorized operations in alien space, he said finally. Breaking galactic law on multiple counts, risking interspecies war, and almost certainly dying in the attempt? Yes. I know exactly the people you need. Harrison stood, leaving payment for both their drinks. Give me 72 hours. The next meeting was in an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of New Geneva, Earth. Sarah arrived to find Harrison waiting with 4 other individuals, each carrying the distinctive bearing of former military personnel. Major Elena Vasquez, former Marine Force Recon, had lost her entire squad to Cathari pirates, while Earth Command debated whether to violate alien territorial claims to rescue them. She still wore her wedding ring, though her husband had died in that ambush 3 years ago. Chief Petty Officer David Park, Naval Intelligence Specialist, had been court-martialed for refusing orders to hand over human prisoners to Altarian authorities. The Altarians had later executed those prisoners for violations of their cultural taboos. Lieutenant Sophia Reeves, former pilot, had been grounded and discharged after speaking publicly about civilian casualties in a bombing run that Earth Command had ordered against her recommendations. The target had been a Zephyrian mining facility with human workers. Sergeant Marcus Cole, demolitions expert, had spent 2 years in military prison for destroying a weapons shipment destined for alien forces that were using them against human colonies. Earth Command had called it theft of Allied resources. Let me understand this correctly, Vasquez said, studying the data Sarah had shared. You want us to infiltrate Zephyrian space, locate and liberate human slaves and extract them without starting an interspecies war? I want us to do what Earth Command should have done decades ago, Sarah replied. I want us to bring our people home. Park looked up from the tactical displays Harrison had prepared. This is a suicide mission. Even if we succeed in locating the slave populations, we don't have the resources for a large-scale extraction. We don't need to extract everyone at once, Sarah explained. We need to prove they exist. Document the slavery. Get evidence that can't be diplomatically dismissed or buried in committee. Reeves leaned back in her chair. And when the Zephyrians declare us pirates and demand our extradition? Sarah's prosthetic hand flexed as she considered the question. Then we make sure they have more immediate problems to worry about. Cole spoke for the first time, his voice gravelly from old injuries. What kind of immediate problems? Sarah smiled, and every person in the room recognized the expression of someone who had moved beyond caring about consequences. The kind that happen when you take something from a human and then make the mistake of thinking we'll accept it quietly. The meeting continued for 6 hours, covering logistics, equipment needs, and extraction routes. By the end, they had the skeleton of a plan that was audacious enough to work, and crazy enough that no one would see it coming. As the team prepared to leave, Harrison pulled Sarah aside. "You realize this changes everything. Once we start this, there's no going back to diplomatic solutions." Sarah looked at her assembled team, 5 military outcasts united by their shared abandonment by the system they'd served. "Good. Diplomatic solutions gave me this." She raised her prosthetic hand, "and left human beings enslaved for centuries. It's time for a different approach, and if we fail, then at least those people will know that someone tried. That's more than they've had for 300 years. The asteroid mining facility in the Vesta Belt had been abandoned for 15 years. Its automated system still functional, but its human operators long since reassigned to more profitable ventures. Now it served as the perfect hidden base for a team that officially didn't exist. Sarah floated in the facility's main command center, her prosthetic hand interfacing directly with the holographic displays showing Zephyrian territorial maps. The past month had been spent acquiring resources, establishing secure communication networks, and most importantly, recruiting additional personnel who shared their motivation. "Supply runs complete," Vasquez reported, guiding a cargo pod through the facility's loading bay. Medical supplies, food for 6 months, and those special items Harrison requested. The special items included military-grade explosives, classified scanning equipment, and weapons that were technically illegal for civilian ownership. Harrison had connections throughout the black market networks that served discharged military personnel who found civilian life inadequate for their skills. Park emerged from the communication array, his face grim. Intercepted transmissions confirmed the intelligence from the data crystal. The Zephyrians have active mining operations in the Tau Ceti system using human labor. Population estimates suggest at least 50,000 descendants of the original colony ships. Sarah felt the familiar anger building in her chest. 50,000 human beings born into slavery, never knowing they had families across the galaxy who had spent centuries wondering what happened to them. "What about security?" Cole asked from where he was assembling the explosive charges they would need. "Heavy orbital defenses around the primary mining worlds," Reeves answered, reviewing the tactical data. "Zephyrian military protocols, automated defense platforms, patrol schedules. It's designed to keep pirates and raiders out, not to stop a precision infiltration." Sarah rotated the holographic display, studying the 3-dimensional layout of the Zephyrian mining system. "We're not going in as pirates or raiders. We're going in as ghosts." The plan had evolved over weeks of careful preparation. 6 modified stealth shuttles, built from salvaged military components and equipped with the latest human cloaking technology. Each shuttle could carry a small team and enough equipment for a 2-week operation. More importantly, they were equipped with quantum communication arrays that would allow real-time data transmission back to human space. "Phase 1 is reconnaissance and documentation," Sarah continued, highlighting specific targets on the display. "We need visual evidence of the slavery, genetic samples to prove human ancestry, and tactical intelligence about their security systems." Harrison joined them, having completed his inspection of the modified shuttles. "Phase 2 is extraction of a small group for witness testimony. We can't save everyone on the first mission, but we can prove they exist and need rescue." "And Phase 3? Vasquez asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. "Phase 3 is making sure the Zephyrians understand that taking something from humans has consequences." Sarah's prosthetic hand clenched into a fist. "We're going to destroy their mining infrastructure and demonstrate that their human workers are not property." The team had grown to 18 personnel, all military veterans who had been abandoned or betrayed by official policies. Each had lost something to alien politics, bureaucratic indifference, or diplomatic convenience. Each had skills that made them valuable for an impossible mission. Dr. Lisa Hammond had been a military xenobiologist until her reports about alien environmental damage were suppressed for political reasons. Now she was their expert on Zephyrian biology and their best chance of developing countermeasures to alien security systems. Chief Engineer Robert Santos had designed defensive systems for human colonies until budget cuts forced him into early retirement. His knowledge of military technology made their stealth modifications possible. Communications. Specialist Jane Morrison had spent her career intercepting alien transmissions until she was forced to retire after refusing to participate in surveillance of human civilians. Her understanding of Zephyrian communication protocols would be essential for maintaining operational security. Equipment check, Sarah announced, activating the facility's main display screen. Each team member's status appeared in green, indicating full combat readiness and mission preparation. The shuttles hung in the facility's modified launch bay, their hull plating designed to scatter sensor sweeps and their drives tuned to mimic asteroid movement patterns. Each craft was a masterpiece of improvised engineering, built by people who understood that failure meant not just death, but the continued enslavement of 50,000 human beings. Final mission briefing in 1 hour, Harrison announced. After that, we're committed. No changing minds, no backing out. Sarah moved to the observation deck overlooking the launch bay, her prosthetic hand resting on the viewport's metal frame. The cold of space beyond was absolute, unforgiving, much like the justice they were planning to deliver. Vasquez joined her at the viewport. Having second thoughts? No, having first thoughts about what comes after. Sarah turned to face her teammate. We're about to violate galactic law on a massive scale. Even if we succeed, Earth will have to decide whether to support us or condemn us. And if they condemn us? Sarah smiled, the expression as cold as the space beyond the viewport. Then at least 50,000 human beings will know that someone cared enough to try. That's worth being condemned for. The final briefing covered every aspect of the mission timeline, jump coordinates that would place them at the edge of Zephyrian sensor range, approach vectors that utilized asteroid cover and planetary shadows, infiltration points based on security patrol patterns they had observed through long-range surveillance. Most importantly, they reviewed their extraction procedures. If the mission went wrong, if they were discovered or captured, each team member carried suicide charges rather than face Zephyrian justice again. They had all seen what alien mercy looked like. One more thing, Sarah added as the briefing concluded. I want each of you to understand that this mission will change everything. We're not just rescuing people. We're announcing to the galaxy that humanity will not accept injustice quietly. Park raised his hand. What if the other species unite against us? What if this starts a galactic war? Sarah was quiet for a moment, considering the question that had kept her awake for weeks. Then it starts a war that should have been fought 3 centuries ago. But I don't think it will come to that. Why not? Morrison asked. Because every species in the galactic community has been watching to see how humans respond to being victimized. They want to know if we're prey or predators. Sarah's prosthetic hand flexed as she spoke. After tomorrow, they'll have their answer. The 18-person team dispersed to their shuttles as the facility's automated systems began the launch sequence. Each craft would follow a different route to the target system, arriving over a span of several days to avoid detection. Sarah took the command shuttle, accompanied by Harrison and Dr. Hammond. As her craft's engines came online and the launch bay doors opened to reveal the starfield beyond, she thought about the message she had recorded for transmission to Earth Command after the mission began. The message was simple. The Zephyrians took my hand as punishment for trying to recover human property. They believed this would teach humanity to accept their version of justice. They were mistaken. What they actually taught us was that some things are worth losing a hand for. Today, they're going to learn what's worth losing everything for. The shuttle launched into space, followed by 17 others, each carrying personnel who had been discarded by the system they served. Now they were about to demonstrate that discarded humans were still dangerous humans. The Tau Ceti system looked peaceful from the edge of sensor range, its 3 inhabited worlds glowing like jewels against the cosmic darkness. Sarah's stealth shuttle drifted among the outer asteroid belt, its modified hull plating making it indistinguishable from the rocky debris that had circled this star for millions of years. First visual confirmation, Dr. Hammond reported from the shuttle's sensor station. Massive industrial operations on Tau Ceti III. Energy signatures consistent with large-scale mining and processing facilities. Sarah activated the quantum communication array, establishing contact with the other 17 shuttles positioned throughout the system. One by one, her team leaders reported their status, hidden, undetected, and ready to begin the mission that would either rescue 50,000 humans or start an interstellar war. "Reeves, what's your status on the orbital defenses?" Sarah asked, her prosthetic hand dancing across the control interface with practiced efficiency. 37 automated defense platforms in stable orbit around the primary mining world. Patrol patterns are predictable. Sensor sweeps follow a 60-minute cycle. There are gaps we can exploit, but the window will be narrow. Harrison studied the tactical display from his position at the weapons console. "Those platforms aren't designed to stop small craft infiltrations. They're meant to destroy large invasion fleets." Classic Zephyrian thinking, preparing to fight the last war. The shuttle's passive scanners had been monitoring communication traffic for 3 days, and the picture they painted was both horrifying and encouraging. Horrifying, because it confirmed the scale of the slave labor operations. Encouraging because it revealed weaknesses in Zephyrian security that a determined team could exploit. "Park, what's the communication situation?" "Zephyrian traffic is heavy but unencrypted on the lower channels. They're using human workers for surface mining operations, asteroid processing, and atmospheric processors. Based on communication patterns, I estimate between 40 and 60,000 human beings across the entire system." Sarah felt her anger crystallize into cold determination. 3 centuries of slavery while Earth's diplomats negotiated trade agreements and cultural exchange programs with the species responsible. "Morrison, any changes in security alerts?" "Negative. Normal routine traffic, supply ship schedules, shift changes at the mining facilities. No indication they're aware of our presence." The first phase of the operation began at local midnight on Tau Ceti III, when the mining facilities operated with reduced security during shift changes. Cole's demolitions team launched from their concealed positions, using personal stealth suits to approach the orbital defense platforms. "Remember, we need those platforms functional but controllable," Sarah reminded them over the comm. "We're not here to destroy their defenses, we're here to take control of them." The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Rather than trying to sneak past or destroy the defense platforms, they would reprogram them to recognize human shuttles as authorized vessels. Cole's expertise with military electronics made this possible, though dangerous. "Platform 7 is ready," Cole reported after 30 minutes of delicate work on the automated defense system's core programming. "Uploading recognition codes for all our shuttles now." One by one, the defense platforms were compromised, their targeting systems modified to ignore human craft while maintaining normal function against actual threats. To any casual observer, the platforms continued their routine patrols, unaware that their definitions of friend and enemy had been quietly altered. "Phase 1 complete," Harrison announced. "We now own their orbital defenses." Phase 2 began with Vasquez's reconnaissance team making planetfall on Tau Ceti III, using modified environmental suits to blend with the mining facility's human workforce. The suits were designed to mimic Zephyrian slave markings, making the infiltrators indistinguishable from the legitimate workers. What they found exceeded their worst expectations. "Jesus Christ," Vasquez whispered over the comm, her suit's cameras transmitting images that made Sarah's stomach clench. "They're not just using humans as workers. They're breeding them like livestock." The mining facility contained thousands of human beings, ranging from elderly individuals who might have been original colonists to children who had never known anything but slavery. They wore identification tags embedded in their skin, lived in dormitory-style housing that was barely adequate for survival, and worked 16-hour shifts processing raw materials for their Zephyrian owners. Genetic samples confirm human ancestry from the missing colony ships, Dr. Hammond reported after analyzing tissue samples Vasquez had collected. "These people are definitely descendants of our missing colonists. Are they aware of their origins?" Sarah asked. "Some of the older ones remember stories about coming from the stars, but the younger generations think they're an indigenous species that's always served the Zephyrians. 3 centuries of systematic cultural erasure." Sarah forced herself to watch the video feeds from Vasquez's team, documenting the systematic dehumanization that had been carried out against her own species. Children who had never seen the sky beyond the mining facility's artificial atmosphere. Adults who believed their purpose was to serve their alien masters. Families separated by breeding programs designed to optimize worker productivity. "This isn't just slavery," Harrison observed grimly. "This is genocide through cultural destruction." The mission parameters changed in that moment. What had started as a rescue operation became something much more significant. These weren't just 50,000 humans who needed liberation. They were 50,000 pieces of evidence proving that one of the galaxy's most respected species was guilty of crimes against humanity on an unprecedented scale. Reeves, prepare for immediate extraction of 12 individuals, Sarah ordered. We need witnesses who can testify to the galactic community about what's happening here. Which 12? Vasquez asked. Sarah studied the personnel files her team had compiled during their reconnaissance. The oldest ones who remember the original stories about coming from the stars. The youngest ones who represent the future generations. And anyone who shows leadership potential among the worker groups. The extraction took 6 hours, with Vasquez's team carefully selecting individuals who could be removed without triggering security alerts. Each person was sedated, placed in a medical pod, and transferred to one of the waiting shuttles. They would wake up in human space with medical care and a chance to tell their stories, but extraction was only Phase 2. Phase 3 was about sending a message that the galaxy would never forget. Cole, are the charges in position? Sarah asked as her team prepared for the final phase of their operation. All primary mining facilities, processing centers, and administrative buildings are wired. We can bring down their entire operation with one signal. Park, what's our communication status? Quantum arrays are ready to transmit. The moment we detonate, every news network in human space will have complete documentation of what we found here. Sarah took a deep breath, her prosthetic hand steady on the detonation control. In a few minutes, they would destroy billions of credits worth of Zephyrian infrastructure and announce to the galaxy that humanity was done being victimized quietly. Harrison, are all teams ready for extraction? All shuttles report ready. The moment we blow their facilities, we'll have approximately 15 minutes before Zephyrian military forces arrive in overwhelming numbers. Sarah activated the fleet communication array, addressing all 18 shuttles simultaneously. This is Commander Chen. In 60 seconds, we're going to change everything. We're going to show the galaxy what happens when you take something from a human and think we'll forget about it. She paused, thinking about her father and the 18,000 colonists who had died 3 centuries ago, thinking about the 50,000 descendants who had spent their lives in bondage, while their families across the galaxy mourned them as dead. Today we announce that humanity remembers its own. Today we demonstrate that human justice doesn't require a tribunal or a judge. It just requires humans who refuse to accept injustice. Her prosthetic hand pressed the detonation control, and Tau Ceti III erupted in brilliant explosions that could be seen from orbit. The explosions on Tau Ceti III lit up the planet's surface like a miniature sunrise, visible from every shuttle in Sarah's fleet as they executed their extraction from the system. 57 mining facilities, 18 processing centers, and the primary administrative complex had been reduced to glowing craters in a coordinated detonation that eliminated 3 centuries of infrastructure built on human slavery. All teams report successful extraction, Harrison announced from his position at the tactical station. No casualties, all witnesses secure. Quantum transmission complete. Sarah watched the destruction on her shuttle's rear cameras as they accelerated away from the planet. The Zephyrian response was exactly what she had anticipated. Chaos, confusion, and increasingly desperate attempts to understand how their most secure system had been infiltrated and destroyed. Zephyrian military forces are converging on the system, Park reported, monitoring their communication traffic. 6 battle cruisers, 12 escort frigates, and a command carrier. Estimated arrival in 40 minutes. More than enough time for us to clear the sensor perimeter, Reeves confirmed from the pilot station. Jump coordinates locked in for rendezvous point 7. Dr. Hammond was busy examining the medical data from their rescued witnesses. 12 individuals successfully extracted, all in stable condition. Genetic analysis confirms ancestry from 4 different colony ships. The oldest subject remembers stories about Earth from her grandmother. Sarah felt a grim satisfaction as she reviewed the mission results. They had accomplished everything they set out to do and more. Evidence of the slavery was now being transmitted to every major news network in human space. Genetic proof of the victims' human ancestry was irrefutable, and the Zephyrians had lost infrastructure worth billions of credits. Most importantly, they had sent a message that would resonate throughout the galactic community. Humanity was no longer willing to accept injustice quietly. Incoming transmission from Earth Command, Morrison announced. Admiral Richardson is requesting immediate communication. Sarah had been expecting this call. Put him through. The holographic image of Admiral Richardson materialized in the shuttle's communication array, his expression a mixture of anger and amazement. Commander Chen, what the hell have you done? I rescued 12 human beings who were being held as slaves, sir. I documented evidence of crimes against humanity that have been ongoing for 3 centuries, and I demonstrated that human beings don't require permission to defend themselves. Richardson's jaw tightened. You've destroyed billions of credits worth of alien infrastructure. You've violated galactic law on multiple counts, and you've put Earth in an impossible diplomatic position. With respect, sir, Earth has been in an impossible diplomatic position for decades. The only difference is that now it's visible. Sarah's prosthetic hand gestured toward the data displays showing the destruction they had caused. How exactly does the diplomatic process address 3 centuries of slavery? Through proper channels, through legal procedures, through negotiation with the galactic community. Richardson paused, clearly struggling with the implications of what Sarah's team had accomplished, not through unauthorized military action that could start an interspecies war. Sarah smiled, the expression as cold as space itself. Admiral, with all due respect, the war started 3 centuries ago when they enslaved our colonists. We just announced that we're finally ready to fight it. The transmission ended as Sarah's shuttle reached the jump coordinates for their return to human space. Behind them, the Tau Ceti system was crawling with Zephyrian, military forces trying to understand how their most secure facility had been penetrated and destroyed by a species they considered diplomatically neutered. The rendezvous point was an abandoned mining station in the asteroid belt between Sol and Proxima Centauri, far enough from Earth to avoid immediate political complications, but close enough to human space for protection. As the 18 shuttles docked with the station, Sarah prepared for the next phase of her campaign. First priority is getting our witnesses to safety and medical care, she announced to the assembled team. Second priority is disseminating the evidence we collected to every news outlet, academic institution, and government body that will listen. Harrison pulled up the communication logs from their quantum transmissions. The story is already spreading. Human news networks are calling it the greatest rescue operation in colonial history. Alien networks are calling it an act of unprovoked terrorism. What's the official Earth government response? Vasquez asked. Morrison read from her communication intercepts. Officially, Earth Command condemns the unauthorized military action and demands the immediate surrender of all personnel involved for prosecution under galactic law. And unofficially? Sarah smiled. Unofficially, we're heroes who did what the government couldn't do through diplomatic channels. The public response has been overwhelmingly supportive. The evidence they had collected was damning beyond any reasonable doubt. Video documentation of human slavery, genetic proof of the victims' ancestry, communication intercepts proving Zephyrian knowledge of their crimes, and historical records showing 3 centuries of systematic exploitation. Dr. Hammond had spent the return journey analyzing the medical data from their witnesses. The psychological conditioning is extensive but not irreversible. These people can be rehabilitated, educated about their true heritage, and integrated into human society. What about the 50,000 we left behind? Cole asked. Sarah's expression hardened. That's phase 4. Over the next week, the political situation evolved rapidly. The evidence of Zephyrian slavery created outrage throughout human space and among several alien species who had their own grievances against the Zephyrians. The galactic community was forced to acknowledge that one of its most respected members had been committing crimes against humanity for centuries. The Zephyrian response was predictable. Denial, claims that the humans had been rescued from a dying colony ship and given productive work, accusations that Earth was manufacturing evidence to justify unprovoked aggression. But their arguments fell apart under scrutiny when genetic analysis proved the slaves' ancestry from multiple colony ships over a span of decades. Galactic Council is calling for an emergency session, Park reported from his monitoring station. 43 species have demanded a formal investigation into human allegations of slavery. And the Zephyrian position? Sarah asked. They're demanding our extradition for terrorism and destruction of civilian infrastructure. They claim we attacked a peaceful mining operation. Sarah laughed, the sound echoing through the station's command center. Peaceful mining operation. That's what they're calling 3 centuries of slavery. The breakthrough came when 3 other species came forward with their own evidence of Zephyrian slavery operations. The Altarians revealed that their missing exploration fleets had also been enslaved in Zephyrian mining operations. The Cathari produced communication intercepts proving Zephyrian involvement in pirate attacks on their merchant vessels. The Centaurans provided financial records showing payments to Zephyrian corporations for biological resources that were clearly sentient beings. "It's bigger than just humans," Harrison observed as they reviewed the growing evidence. "The Zephyrians have been running the galaxy's largest slavery operation for centuries, hiding behind their reputation as a civilized species." Sarah studied the tactical displays showing Zephyrian military deployments throughout the galaxy. Their forces were being repositioned to defend their core systems as more species demanded investigations into their missing populations. "They're getting desperate," Vasquez noted. "Desperate species make mistakes." "Good," Sarah replied, "because Phase 4 is going to require them to make a very big mistake." The communication from Earth Command arrived as Sarah was reviewing intelligence reports about Zephyrian fleet movements. Admiral Richardson's image appeared on the holographic display, but his expression was different from their last conversation. "Commander Chen, I have new orders for you." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "I wasn't aware I was still in a position to receive orders, sir." "The situation has changed. The Galactic Council has voted to authorize a joint investigation into the slavery allegations. More importantly, they've voted to authorize military action to liberate any confirmed slave populations." Sarah felt her heart rate increase. "What kind of military action?" "A joint fleet operation with representation from 12 species. Earth will be providing command personnel for the human liberation components." Richardson paused. "They want you to lead it. Even though I'm a convicted criminal under galactic law? The Galactic Council has voted to suspend all charges related to your initial action, given the evidence you provided. You're being offered a full reinstatement to active duty and promotion to Fleet Admiral for this operation." Sarah looked at her assembled team. The military rejects who had become heroes through their willingness to act when others wouldn't. "What about my people?" "Full pardons and reinstatement for anyone who wants it. The galaxy recognizes that sometimes justice requires people willing to act outside official channels." Sarah's prosthetic hand flexed as she considered the offer. From convicted criminal to Fleet Admiral in a matter of weeks. From unauthorized rescue. The explosions on Tau Ceti III lit up the planet's surface like a miniature sunrise, visible from every shuttle in Sarah's fleet as they executed their extraction from the system. 57 mining facilities, 18 processing centers, and the primary administrative complex had been reduced to glowing craters in a coordinated detonation that eliminated 3 centuries of infrastructure built on human slavery. "All teams report successful extraction," Harrison announced from his position at the tactical station. "No casualties, all witnesses secure. Quantum transmission complete." Sarah watched the destruction on her shuttle's rear cameras as they accelerated away from the planet. The Zephyrian response was exactly what she had anticipated: chaos, confusion, and increasingly desperate attempts to understand how their most secure system had been infiltrated and destroyed. "Zephyrian military forces are converging on the system," Park reported, monitoring their communication traffic. 6 battle cruisers, 12 escort frigates, and a command carrier. Estimated arrival in 40 minutes. "More than enough time for us to clear the sensor perimeter," Reeves confirmed from the pilot station. Jump coordinates locked in for rendezvous point 7. Dr. Hammond was busy examining the medical data from their rescued witnesses. 12 individuals successfully extracted, all in stable condition. Genetic analysis confirms ancestry from 4 different colony ships. The oldest subject remembers stories about Earth from her grandmother. Sarah felt a grim satisfaction as she reviewed the mission results. They had accomplished everything they set out to do and more. Evidence of the slavery was now being transmitted to every major news network in human space. Genetic proof of the victims' human ancestry was irrefutable, and the Zephyrians had lost infrastructure worth billions of credits. Most importantly, they had sent a message that would resonate throughout the galactic community. Humanity was no longer willing to accept injustice quietly. "Incoming transmission from Earth Command," Morrison announced. "Admiral Richardson is requesting immediate communication." Sarah had been expecting this call. "Put him through." The holographic image of Admiral Richardson materialized in the shuttle's communication array. his expression a mixture of anger and amazement. "Commander Chen, what the hell have you done?" "I rescued 12 human beings who were being held as slaves, sir. I documented evidence of crimes against humanity that have been ongoing for 3 centuries, and I demonstrated that human beings don't require permission to defend themselves." Richardson's jaw tightened. "You've destroyed billions of credits worth of alien infrastructure. You've violated galactic law on multiple counts, and you've put Earth in an impossible diplomatic position. With respect, sir, Earth has been in an impossible diplomatic position for decades. The only difference is that now it's visible." Sarah's prosthetic hand gestured toward the data displays showing the destruction they had caused. "How exactly does the diplomatic process address 3 centuries of slavery?" "Through proper channels. Through legal procedures. Through negotiation with the galactic community." Richardson paused, clearly struggling with the implications of what Sarah's team had accomplished. "Not through unauthorized military action that could start an interspecies war." Sarah smiled, the expression as cold as space itself. "Admiral, with all due respect, the war started 3 centuries ago when they enslaved our colonists. We just announced that we're finally ready to fight it." The transmission ended as Sarah's shuttle reached the jump coordinates for their return to human space. Behind them, the Tau Ceti system was crawling with Zephyrian military forces trying to understand how their most secure facility had been penetrated and destroyed by a species they considered diplomatically neutered. The rendezvous point was an abandoned mining station in the asteroid belt between Sol and Proxima Centauri, far enough from Earth to avoid immediate political complications, but close enough to human space for protection. As the 18 shuttles docked with the station, Sarah prepared for the next phase of her campaign. "First priority is getting our witnesses to safety and medical care," she announced to the assembled team. "Second priority is disseminating the evidence we collected to every news outlet, academic institution, and government body that will listen." Harrison pulled up the communication logs from their quantum transmissions. "The story is already spreading. Human news networks are calling it the greatest rescue operation in colonial history. Alien networks are calling it an act of unprovoked terrorism." "What's the official Earth government response?" Vasquez asked. Morrison read from her communication intercepts. "Officially, Earth Command condemns the unauthorized military action and demands the immediate surrender of all personnel involved for prosecution under galactic law." "And unofficially?" Sarah smiled. "Unofficially, we're heroes who did what the government couldn't do through diplomatic channels. The public response has been overwhelmingly supportive. The evidence they had collected was damning beyond any reasonable doubt. Video documentation of human slavery, genetic proof of the victims' ancestry, communication intercepts proving Zephyrian knowledge of their crimes, and historical records showing 3 centuries of systematic exploitation. Dr. Hammond had spent the return journey analyzing the medical data from their witnesses. The psychological conditioning is extensive but not irreversible. These people can be rehabilitated, educated about their true heritage, and integrated into human society." "What about the 50,000 we left behind?" Cole asked. Sarah's expression hardened. "That's Phase 4. Over the next week, the political situation evolved rapidly. The evidence of Zephyrian slavery created outrage throughout human space and among several alien species who had their own grievances against the Zephyrians. The galactic community was forced to acknowledge that one of its most respected members had been committing crimes against humanity for centuries. The Zephyrian response was predictable. Denial, claims that the humans had been rescued from a dying colony ship and given productive work, accusations that Earth was manufacturing evidence to justify unprovoked aggression. But their arguments fell apart under scrutiny when genetic analysis proved the slaves' ancestry from multiple colony ships over a span of decades. Galactic Council is calling for an emergency session, Park reported from his monitoring station. 43 species have demanded a formal investigation into human allegations of slavery. "And the Zephyrian position?" Sarah asked. "They're demanding our extradition for terrorism and destruction of civilian infrastructure. They claim we attacked a peaceful mining operation." Sarah laughed, the sound echoing through the station's command center. "Peaceful mining operation. That's what they're calling 3 centuries of slavery." The breakthrough came when 3 other species came forward with their own evidence of Zephyrian slavery operations. The Altarians revealed that their missing exploration fleets had also been enslaved in Zephyrian mining operations. The Cathari produced communication intercepts proving Zephyrian involvement in pirate attacks on their merchant vessels. The Centaurans provided financial records showing payments to Zephyrian corporations for biological resources that were clearly sentient beings. "It's bigger than just humans," Harrison observed as they reviewed the growing evidence. "The Zephyrians have been running the galaxy's largest slavery operation for centuries, hiding behind their reputation as a civilized species." Sarah studied the tactical displays showing Zephyrian military deployments throughout the galaxy. Their forces were being repositioned to defend their core systems as more species demanded investigations into their missing populations. "They're getting desperate," Vasquez noted. "Desperate species make mistakes." "Good," Sarah replied, "because Phase 4 is going to require them to make a very big mistake." The communication from Earth Command arrived as Sarah was reviewing intelligence reports about Zephyrian fleet movements. Admiral Richardson's image appeared on the holographic display, but his expression was different from their last conversation. "Commander Chen, I have new orders for you." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "I wasn't aware I was still in a position to receive orders, sir." "The situation has changed. The Galactic Council has voted to authorize a joint investigation into the slavery allegations. More importantly, they've voted to authorize military action to liberate any confirmed slave populations." Sarah felt her heart rate increase. "What kind of military action?" "A joint fleet operation with representation from 12 species. Earth will be providing command personnel for the human liberation components." Richardson paused. "They want you to lead it. Even though I'm a convicted criminal under galactic law? The Galactic Council has voted to suspend all charges related to your initial action, given the evidence you provided. You're being offered a full reinstatement to active duty and promotion to Fleet Admiral for this operation." Sarah looked at her assembled team. The military rejects who had become heroes through their willingness to act when others wouldn't. "What about my people?" "Full pardons and reinstatement for anyone who wants it. The galaxy recognizes that sometimes justice requires people willing to act outside official channels." Sarah's prosthetic hand flexed as she considered the offer. From convicted criminal to Fleet Admiral in a matter of weeks. From unauthorized Risi, Fleet Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the battleship Indomitable, her prosthetic hand resting on the tactical display showing 87 Allied warships arranged in perfect formation around the Zephyrian home system. 6 months had passed since her unauthorized rescue mission, and now she commanded the largest liberation fleet in galactic history. "All vessels report ready." "Admiral," Harrison announced from his position as her chief of operations. The former disgraced colonel now wore the uniform of a commodore, commanding the human contingent of the Allied fleet. "Zephyrian defensive positions?" Sarah asked, though she had studied the intelligence reports dozens of times. 300 orbital defense platforms, 42 capital ships, 116 escort vessels, Vasquez reported from the intelligence station. "They've fortified every major population center and industrial facility." Sarah smiled grimly. The Zephyrians had spent 6 months preparing for this confrontation, believing their military superiority would be enough to protect them from the consequences of their crimes. They had not anticipated that 12 other species would join the liberation effort, or that their own slave populations would begin coordinated uprisings across their territory. "Dr. Hammond, status on the slave populations?" "Intelligence from our reconnaissance teams confirms at least 200,000 human beings across 17 Zephyrian systems," Hammond replied from her position coordinating the medical evacuation ships. "Additional evidence suggests similar numbers of Altarian, Cathari, and Centauran slaves." The scope of Zephyrian slavery had grown with each investigation. What began as Sarah's search for a missing human colonist had uncovered a systematic program of species exploitation that spanned centuries and involved millions of sentient beings. "Communications from the Zephyrian government?" Morrison asked. "Standard diplomatic protests about violations of their territorial sovereignty," Park answered. "Claims that all workers in their territory are voluntary employees with full legal protections." Sarah's prosthetic hand clenched into a fist. Even facing overwhelming military force, the Zephyrians maintained their fiction that systematic slavery was legitimate employment. "Open a channel to all fleet vessels," Sarah ordered. "This is Fleet Admiral Chen to all ships. Today we end 3 centuries of injustice. Today we demonstrate that crimes against sentient beings have consequences." Regardless of diplomatic immunity or political convenience, she paused, thinking about the 12 rescued humans who were now serving as witnesses in galactic courts. Their testimony had provided the legal justification for this military action, but Sarah knew this was about more than legal procedures. Our mission is to liberate every enslaved being in Zephyrian space and ensure this never happens again. We will show mercy to those who surrender. We will show none to those who resist. Begin the operation. The Allied fleet moved with precision that would have been impossible through diplomatic channels. 12 species coordinating their military efforts, united by evidence of Zephyrian crimes and determination to end them permanently. The first phase targeted the orbital defenses around major slaveholding facilities. Rather than attempting to destroy the platforms, specialized boarding teams captured them intact, turning the Zephyrian defensive network against itself. Defense platforms 7 through 15 are under our control, Cole reported from his demolition ship, uploading new targeting parameters now. The captured platforms opened fire on their former operators, creating chaos in the Zephyrian defensive lines. Within 2 hours, most of their orbital defenses were either destroyed or under Allied control. Phase 2 began with mass landings on 17 worlds simultaneously. Sarah had learned from her small-scale rescue operation and applied those lessons to a system-wide liberation effort. Instead of trying to sneak past Zephyrian security, the Allied fleet simply overwhelmed it through superior numbers and coordination. First liberation site secured, Reeves reported from the surface of Zephyr Prime, confirming presence of approximately 12,000 human slaves and 8,000 Altarian slaves. Medical teams are beginning immediate evacuation. Similar reports came in from across the system as liberation teams secured mining facilities, processing centers, and residential compounds where enslaved populations had been held for generations. The Zephyrian military response was fierce but uncoordinated. Their forces had been designed to maintain internal security and defend against external invasion, not to fight a multi-species coalition with perfect intelligence about their operations. Zephyrian battle group approaching Sector 7, Tactical reported. 42 vessels, heavy cruiser configuration. Deploy the Altarian fast attack squadrons, Sarah ordered. Let them have the honor of the first engagement. The space battle that followed was brief and decisive. The Altarians had been preparing for this confrontation since their own missing people were discovered in Zephyrian slave camps. Their attack was both militarily effective and emotionally satisfying. Zephyrian battle group neutralized, the Altarian squadron commander reported. Requesting permission to begin liberation of Industrial Complex 12. Permission granted. Excellent work, Commander. By the end of the first day, the Allied fleet had secured 40% of the known slave facilities and documented evidence of crimes that exceeded their worst projections. The Zephyrians hadn't just enslaved other species. They had been systematically breeding them for specific industrial purposes, creating genetic modifications to enhance worker productivity, and eliminating individuals who showed signs of rebellion. This isn't just slavery, Dr. Hammond reported after examining liberated populations. This is systematic genetic experimentation on sentient beings. They've been treating other species as laboratory animals for centuries. Sarah reviewed the evidence files, her anger building with each documented atrocity. Children born with enhanced muscle development for heavy labor, adults with modified respiratory systems for working in toxic atmospheres, elderly individuals kept alive solely for their knowledge of specialized industrial processes. Admiral, incoming transmission from the Zephyrian government, Morrison announced. They're requesting a ceasefire for negotiations. Put them through. The holographic image of the Zephyrian Prime Minister materialized on the bridge, his forearms gesticulating in what Sarah recognized as extreme agitation. Admiral Chen, this unprovoked attack on our sovereign territory violates every principle of galactic law. We demand immediate cessation of hostilities and withdrawal of all foreign military forces. Sarah's prosthetic hand tapped against the tactical display as she studied the Zephyrian leader. Prime Minister, you seem to be confused about the legal situation. The Galactic Council has authorized this operation under the Sentient Rights Protection Act. We're not invading your territory. We're liberating enslaved populations. Those individuals are legitimate workers employed under proper contracts. Sarah laughed, the sound echoing through the bridge. Minister, we have genetic evidence proving systematic breeding programs, medical records showing forced genetic modifications, and testimony from thousands of victims. Your legitimate workers include children who were born in captivity and have never seen the outside of mining facilities. The Prime Minister's bioluminescent patterns shifted to deep red, indicating extreme distress. Any irregularities in our employment practices can be addressed through proper diplomatic channels. Military action is completely unjustified. 3 centuries of irregularities, Minister. 3 centuries of my people wondering what happened to their missing families while you worked them to death in your mines. Sarah leaned forward, her voice carrying the ice-cold anger that had driven her from the beginning. The time for diplomatic channels ended when you cut off my hand for trying to retrieve stolen human property. We can negotiate reparations, policy changes, international oversight of our employment practices. Minister, you seem to be under the impression that you're in a position to negotiate. Sarah gestured to the tactical display showing Allied ships throughout the Zephyrian system. Let me clarify the situation. We have superior military force, evidence of your crimes, and authorization from the galactic community to end your slavery operations permanently. She paused, her prosthetic hand flexing as she continued. What you can do is surrender unconditionally and cooperate with the liberation effort. What you cannot do is negotiate the terms of your own punishment. The transmission ended as the Prime Minister realized that his species' military superiority and diplomatic immunity were both meaningless against an opponent who had already lost everything and decided the consequences were acceptable. The liberation effort continued for 6 days, with Allied forces systematically freeing enslaved populations from every Zephyrian facility. The final count was staggering. Nearly 800,000 beings from 17 different species, held in conditions that violated every principle of sentient rights. Last transport departing Zephyrian space, Harrison reported as the evacuation concluded. All liberated populations are en route to rehabilitation facilities in their home systems. Sarah stood on the observation deck of the Indomitable, watching the last rescue ships jump to hyperspace, carrying their precious cargo of liberated beings. Behind them, the Zephyr,